Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Tonight, I'm bringing you 4 terrifying true airport horror stories. Real incidents that happen to real people in places where we usually feel safe, surrounded by lights, cameras, and crowds. But sometimes, even the busiest airports hide moments of fear, confusion, and danger that you never forget. So sit back, turn down the lights, and listen closely, because these stories might change the way you feel the next time you step into an airport. The first story comes from a man named Daniel who was traveling from Denver to Seattle for a work conference. His flight was early in the morning, so he arrived at the airport around 4 a.m. The place was quiet, far quieter than he expected. There were only a few passengers scattered around, and the shops were still opening. At that hour, the airport always felt a bit eerie, but that morning it felt different. As soon as he passed through security and walked toward his gate, he noticed someone behind him. A man wearing a dark hoodie, walking slowly, never too close but never far. At first, Daniel ignored it. Airports are full of people, and chances are someone walking in the same direction looks like they're following you. But after a couple of minutes, he started to feel uneasy. Whenever he sped up, the man sped up. When he slowed down, the man slowed down. He stopped by a closed store window, pretending to check his phone, and in the reflection, he clearly saw the man standing still behind him, staring at him without blinking. Daniel's heart started pounding. He didn't want to panic, so he kept walking, trying to reach a more crowded area. But the man suddenly changed direction and took a shortcut around a pillar. The next moment, he stepped out directly in front of Daniel, blocking his path. Daniel froze. The man lifted his head slightly, but his face was shadowed by the hoodie. In a low voice, almost like a whisper, he said, "You shouldn't be here right now." Daniel stepped back, unsure if he heard him correctly. The man repeated it, "You shouldn't be here right now." Before Daniel could respond, a cleaning cart came rolling by, and a janitor turned the corner. The hooded man instantly stepped back, walked away, and disappeared into a staff-only hallway. Daniel quickly approached an airport officer and reported it, but the officer told him that hallway was locked, and no unauthorized person could access it. They checked the footage from the camera in that area, but the strange thing was, there was no one behind Daniel. No hooded man, nobody close to him. The video showed Daniel stopping, looking tense, and stepping back, as if reacting to someone, but the man wasn't there. To this day, Daniel says he doesn't know if it was stress, lack of sleep, or something else entirely. But he remembers the voice, clear and cold, telling him he shouldn't be there, and the feeling that someone watched him long after the plane took off. The second story happened to a woman named Priya, who had a layover in Dubai during a late night flight. Her connection was 6 hours long, so she decided to rest in one of the quiet lounges. Around 2 a.m., the lounge was almost empty. She found a reclining chair near a window and closed her eyes. But after about 20 minutes, she started hearing whispering. At first, she thought it was coming from another passenger nearby, but when she opened her eyes, the lounge was completely empty except for her. The whispering continued soft, distant, but getting clearer. She sat up and scanned the room, nothing. The whispering grew more distinct, like someone standing right behind her speaking in a language she didn't recognize. She turned around, but no one was there. The lights flickered for a second, and she felt a cold breeze brush her neck, even though the air conditioning vents were across the room. She grabbed her bag and moved to another part of the lounge, closer to the entrance. After a few minutes, she began feeling sleepy again, but as soon as she closed her eyes, she felt something touch her shoulder, a light tap, like fingers. She gasped and jumped up, clutching her backpack. Again, the room was empty. Panicked, Priya left the lounge and walked around the terminal for about an hour. She finally settled down near a group of passengers sleeping on benches. She felt safer around others, but that's when things got even stranger. She noticed a woman in a long black dress standing across the hallway. The woman didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stared directly at Priya. Priya tried to ignore her, but after a few seconds, she looked back and the woman was suddenly much closer, standing only a few feet away. No sound, no footsteps, just there. Priya screamed and ran to the nearest security officer. When they checked, the woman was gone. They reviewed the cameras and what they showed was chilling. Priya reacting in terror to something approaching her, but just like the first story, nothing appeared on camera. She finally boarded her flight, shaken and sleepless. For months afterward, she said she couldn't sit alone in quiet public places without feeling the hair on her neck stand up, remembering the silent woman in the airport who kept getting closer. The third story happened to a couple named Jim and Alexa during a winter storm in Chicago. Their flight was delayed several hours, and the airport was packed with frustrated passengers. They decided to walk around to stretch their legs. As they passed one of the lesser-used concourses, they noticed most of the shops were closed, and the hallway was almost empty. That's when they heard crying, faint but unmistakable. It sounded like a child. Alexa followed the sound and spotted a little girl sitting on the floor near a deserted gate. She looked about 6 years old, wearing a thin white dress, completely inappropriate for winter. The girl had her face buried in her hands, crying softly. Alexa approached her gently and asked, "Sweetie, are you lost?" The girl didn't answer. She just kept crying. Jim went to find an airport worker while Alexa stayed with her. Alexa knelt down, trying to comfort the child, but something felt strange. The girl's crying sounded almost rehearsed, like the same sobbing pattern repeated over and over again. When Jim returned with an airport employee, the little girl suddenly stopped crying. She lowered her hands and stared directly at both of them with blank, emotionless eyes. Then she stood up and slowly walked toward one of the jet bridges. The airport worker called out to her, telling her she wasn't allowed there, but the girl ignored him. She walked straight into the jet bridge and disappeared. When the worker unlocked the door and checked, the jet bridge was empty. Both ends were locked. No one could have gotten in or out without triggering alarms. They checked security footage for that concourse, and that section of the video was corrupted completely black for several minutes. The worker then told them something that made the couple's blood run cold. Years ago, during a winter storm, a family was separated in the airport. A little girl went missing and was found hours later outside near a service exit, having wandered into the freezing cold. Since then, several employees had reported seeing a girl in a white dress in that same concourse during winter delays. The fourth and final story comes from a young man named Victor who was flying home from college during the holidays. His flight was late at night, and by the time he reached the airport, most of the shops were closing. He had an hour to wait, so he found a quiet corner near a large window overlooking the runway. As he scrolled through his phone, he noticed movement in the reflection, someone seated a few chairs behind him. He turned, expecting another traveler, but the seats were all empty. He shrugged it off, thinking it was just a trick of the dim lights. A few minutes later, he felt someone walk past him close enough that he felt their presence, but again, no one was there. He decided to move closer to the gate, where there were at least a few passengers waiting. But as he walked, he heard footsteps behind him, slow, deliberate, matching his pace. He turned quickly, but the hallway was empty. He sped up, heart racing, and headed for a brightly lit area. As he approached a vending machine, he felt a rush of cold air behind him. When he turned, he finally saw it, a shadow not cast on the floor or the wall, but standing upright, shaped like a person, completely black, with no features. It didn't move, it didn't make a sound, it just stood there a few feet away, Victor froze. The shadow slowly tilted its head as if observing him. Then, without warning, it lunged forward. Victor stumbled back, hitting the vending machine hard. The lights in the hallway flickered violently, and then the shadow vanished. Security arrived moments later after hearing the noise. They checked the cameras, and again, the footage was bizarre. The video showed Victor walking alone, then suddenly reacting in terror and falling backward. But there was no shadow, nothing chasing him, nothing there at all. To this day, Victor refuses to travel alone at night. Sometimes he says he still sees the shadow in reflections in train windows, car mirrors, even glass doors. Always watching, always waiting. These stories remind us that airports aren't just places of travel. They're places filled with millions of emotions, memories, and energies passing through every day. Sometimes people see things they can't explain, and sometimes those things follow them long after the journey ends. And tonight's stories prove one thing: even in the safest places, the unknown can still find you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed these terrifying true airport stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more chilling content every week. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and never ignore that strange feeling when something just doesn't feel right. Good night.